the video that I made last week on how I set up a black background shoot? If not, make sure you check out the link in the description to go and have a look at that video. Because this week we are going to be covering how I edit the photos that I took during that session. So are you ready? Let's get started. Okay, so we are now in Adobe Lightroom. I have imported all of the photos which I took during that session, and I have selected this photo as my favorite of those photos. So let's go through and start editing. Now you will see me turning a bit. I've got two screens up here, so I am going to be looking over this way quite a lot whilst I'm doing the editing. I'm not distracted, it's just that two-screen situation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the develop module over here, and that will open up our photo and all of our options for editing on the right hand side over here. Now this photo is a little bit dark. If you remember during the last week's video, I did explain that we had to slightly underexpose our picture so that we could get that black background. Now we're going to actually select our product and bring the exposure of that product back up so that we can actually see the product nice and clearly. So we're going to click on this tool over here. This is the masking tool, and we've got a select subject option. So I'm going to click on that and it will automatically select our subject. If you want to learn more about this tool, I do have a video on that. So again, I'll link that in the description for you. But what you can see is our bottle has now turned red, which is exactly what we want. And if I just zoom in on this, we can actually just check the edge of this and make sure that it has got all of the product in and not too much of that background. And we've got a nice feathered effect there, which you can see as I'm just scrolling through. So I've just zoomed into 200%, which is maybe a little bit more than we need. You can see there's a little bit of a dip here. So I might just come back and just adjust that little bit. We'll see. I'm not sure if it's going to make any difference at this point. Everything else is looking pretty good. So I'm just going to leave it like that, and let's start making some changes and see whether that little indent down the bottom right of the bottle there does actually make an effect. Let's see. When I just start to bring up the exposure here, that is actually looking pretty good now. Okay. So we have now brought up the exposure of our bottle. The background is still black, which is exactly what we want to do. So we're getting about the right exposure on the bottle. The only thing is maybe a little bit of these highlights are not quite perfect. So I'm going to go over them with the spot removal tool. So this time I'm just going to zoom in to 100%. And just use this spot removal tool just to remove any of these unwanted colors and marks that we have on the bottle here. And again, just moving that around to get it till it looks the best, basically. So I'm really not liking that bright spot there. So just moving it, making some changes to where exactly it is, how it looks. We've also got the clone versus the heel that you can switch between. And instead of just a spot, we can always do more of sort of a line like that. Maybe it would work better. This is a very hard one to work on. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of maneuvering to get it looking perfect. Okay, so I think that's looking a little bit better now. We still do have this ring light here, which I actually do kind of like. So I think I'm going to leave that one there. And just add a little bit of contrast to this image, just to again make that bottle pop. And a little bit of dehaze is also one of my favorite tools to add. We can also just reduce some of the shine on this label a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another mask, and I'm just going to use the brush tool this time just to paint a mask over this label. Okay, so now I have that painted in, I can just use the exposure again and just bring that down slightly. I'm also just going to bring the highlights down ever so slightly and just up the contrast a tiny bit. Just small changes just to reduce the shine on there. And then I think I'm going to go back into that first mask that we had, so the mask on the whole bottle. And I am going to actually just increase that brightness, that exposure, just a tad more, just to bring that up even more, making sure that that label really does pop against that black background. Now the other thing is we are sort of losing a bit of the bottom of the bottle down here. Now we can clearly see the top of the bottle, but the bottom of the bottle has kind of been lost a little bit. So now I'm going to actually just see if I can bring that up a little bit more. So again, using these masks, what I'm going to do is just create another brush mask. And I'm going to zoom in and just kind of work out where exactly the edge of this bottle is and just paint a very simple line coming down. This is quite hard to do because it is very dark and it's very faint to see where exactly that line of the bottle is. So it's hard to get this exactly perfect, but that hopefully will work. Let me just bring that slightly, just so we start to get a little bit of definition around that bottle at the bottom there. Again, that isn't perfect. I can come in and my brush here is not feathered, which is probably my problem. So there we go. So I want to add a bit more feather to that brush, just to really sort of soften that out a little bit. Really just sort of bring that in a bit more. So really sort of get the edge of that bottle there. That's maybe a little too much. And then still just playing with the colour on that and getting the right colour to really just sort of give a little bit of a glow around the edge of that bottle. That is all you want, is just a little bit of a glow to really just define where the bottom of that bottle is. And that is pretty much it. The last thing I always do, and I did notice with this picture, there was a little bit of color fringing, particularly on some of the areas. So you can see there's a little bit of color coming in noise. Even though I shot this at ISO 100, there's still some color noise coming in there, especially where we have brightened it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove some of that color noise. That's quite a bit there. And again, it's just playing around and with the sliders until you get the settings how you want them. And coming back up again into that mask number 3, and I can also just desaturate that a little bit. So I zoom in and just desaturate that so we lose some of that noise there as well. A little bit of luminance. There we go. Now it's the luminance noise as well as the color noise. Just going back over and checking the whole bottle, make sure it looks good, and I'm pretty happy with that shot. Okay, so that was how I edited that photo. It was a quick and simple edit, just using different masks to create different effects. So again, if you want to learn more about those masks, I do have a video on the masking tool, so the link is in the description for that. I do hope that you have found this video useful. If you do have any questions, please just drop them in the comments for me and I will be happy to answer them. Other than that, thank you for watching and I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.